What's going on, Sigma males? This is Alex from Sigma Spirit. And I was thinking recently about where this model of masculinity I grew up on, where did it come from? What makes you a man? When you're a boy, you're exposed to many things. Modern life as a young boy in most Western countries, we've grown up in a different kind of era, and the masculinity we've observed has come from various different places. Probably a lot different from your hunter-gatherer society where you're watching your elders. And I started thinking about how I grew up on movies. And before I get into this list of guys that made up my masculine model growing up, I just want to ask you to go ahead and like this video, because when you like a video, it helps us grow the channel. How? Because liking a video helps share the video, helps spread the idea. Liking a video is not just for me to see that people like me, it's actually to help spread the ideas, spread the videos, help them grow, get more views, etc. So if you could please like this video, if you like this video. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about growing up as an introverted kid. When you're an introverted kid, you observe many things. You're slightly empathetic, you're a little bit sensitive, and I was no different. So I grew up on movies, I grew up on TV. I had a lot of alone time. I had a lot of time, opportunities to observe, and most of that came in front of the TV. So thinking back on my childhood, I'm able to remember these characters I saw, these people that I observed, and I can remember them so clearly. And I can almost see parts of my own personality, who I think I am, reflected from those people. And so I wrote a list of 11 actors, movie characters, that I think really made my model in some ways of what masculinity was. By the time I was like 14 or 15, I had this idea of what masculinity was. Some of these characters are ridiculous, outrageous. Some of them are good characters, good actors. And some of them are just a little bit crazy, and I think it's kind of a funny list. I hope this video is a little bit funny, because it can help us realize how much the outside world can influence our model of what a person should act like, and the role of Hollywood, media, and stuff like that in determining who you are. And there's a lot of talk about how Hollywood can negatively impact you and create these weird beliefs, but I think in many ways the beliefs that they implanted in the 80s and 90s, whether it was propaganda or not, I think were really constructive for a lot of people. So in this list, we've got a little bit of Sigma male, we've got a little bit of anti-hero, we've got some strong silent types, hyper-masculine types, and some goofballs. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to get right into it. Number 1, we've got Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China. So I remember this character, Jack Burton. He's real rough, he's a renegade, and he's really irreverent. And he always has this like one-liner all the time, and he's really funny. And he's funny, and he's cool, and he's calm under this pressure. And then we've got Daniel Day-Lewis in Last of the Mohicans. And this is a bit more serious. Daniel Day-Lewis is a much more serious actor than many. In my opinion, he's one of the greatest actors to have ever lived. And in this movie, he plays this incredibly strong, yet silent, yet very sensitive and a little introspective character, fueled by honor, integrity, doing the right thing. And he's the real hero. He's not an anti-hero. And he's this Native American who represents the last of the Mohicans. And I think of that when I think about Sigma males. Helps me draw some parallels. How he's this very misunderstood sort of last of the few. And I love this character. I love the whole movie. The whole soundtrack is incredible. And he also has this sort of Sigma spirit quality to him, where he's very connected to nature as obviously indigenous peoples were the last to really be connected to nature in that way. And so when I think about Sigma Spirit, the sort of pillars of being Sigma Spirit, I think of Daniel Day-Lewis and Last of the Mohicans, and that sort of will do anything for the right cause attitude. Number 3, we've got Marlon Brando in the movie Streetcar Named Desire. And this movie I actually saw much later in life. I think I was probably 15, 14. And I remember seeing it and instantly thinking, that's body language. That's subcommunication. In this movie, he's real physical. He's just a sexual character. He's like a panther. He's like a leopard. He's so cool, so aloof, and so charged up with that sexuality, that physicality. I think it's a great movie to watch if you want to watch subcommunication, body language. Number 4, the fourth character that helped me understand masculinity when I was a kid, or at least one version of it. We've got Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones. And in this movie, he plays this real reluctant hero. He's really a person who just wants to be left alone, chase his own adventures, be a little selfish, and yet he gets roped into these sort of crazy experiences, and he hesitates a little bit, but he ultimately does the right thing, which I think is what many of us do. We're a little hesitant. We want to do our own selfish thing, but ultimately when the call is put out there, we try to answer it. And I love Indiana Jones. He's one of my favorites. He's a real Sigma Spirit kind of guy, in my opinion. He's adventurous. He's masculine. And yet he's connected still to a different way of life, an ancient way of life. Number 5, we've got Carl Weathers. We've got the good friend in 2 movies. So not just one character, but he plays the real right-hand man in 2 movies. We've got Predator and Rocky. And as a young boy, I remember watching this and thinking, this is what black strength looks like. You see the loyalty, you see the compassion, the motivation, the leadership of Carl Weathers in these 2 movies. And I just remember watching these movies, and still to this day I watch clips of Carl Weathers, and it's incredible. Like when he's talking to Rocky, he's always been a source of motivation for Rocky. He's like the one person that can talk to Rocky through the movies, and besides Mick. And in this one scene, he's sparring with Rocky, and Rocky says, "Let's do it tomorrow, man. Let's do it tomorrow." And Carl Weathers, just with all that intensity, all that power, that strength, he just says, "There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow." And I just remember watching that and thinking, that's loyalty, that's friendship, that's what a masculine best friend is. And in that time, the 80s, we were still very much getting over racial tensions and things like that, and to see that at a young age, to see that like black best friend, I think was really important for me to understand masculinity was masculinity, friendship was friendship, that there weren't any barriers, that masculinity saw masculinity and respected one another. And I just love that character. Number 6, we've got Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes. And in this movie, you see this character crash lands on a distant planet. And if you haven't seen this, I'm going to spoil it for you. You should have seen this already. It's been out for many decades. But in the end, after all these tribulations of being on this planet, the planet of the apes, fighting against these aliens he thinks are aliens, being in this distant, weird land, he comes to find out that he's actually on planet Earth. So, in these movies, we see Charlton Heston in isolation, and yet very self-reliant. And also we see what masculinity can look like when there's no real system in place. It's just one guy. He's one of the last humans, and the rest of the people, or the rest of the creatures, the beings, are the apes. So we get to see what it's like for the last of someone to really stand strong, have conviction, and just be hated on, be misunderstood. And when I saw that as a young person, I remember thinking that there would be times in my life where you would be outcast, you would be misunderstood. And I think that really helped me understand the Sigma male outcast feeling. And Charlton Heston's just such a great character. I think he plays another character in Omega Man. I think it's him, in which he's also just kind of like that I Am Legend character, where he's the last man on Earth. And it's so good. He just plays that character so well. Number 7, you want to talk about broody. You want to talk about dark, moody. You've got Sylvester Stallone in Cobra. And in this movie, he is some sort of renegade cop or detective or something. And he's trying to solve these murders, catch the bad guy. It's been many years since I saw the movie, so I'm sorry if I screw up the plot. But I just remember how dark, how cool, how broody, how moody he is. In the whole movie, he's just got this badass gun, and he's walking around with the matchstick, I think it's a match in his mouth, and he's just cool. And he has this dark well of energy within him. And you just watch him and you're just like, that's a brooding character. A little bit of an anti-hero, but very much strong, very much cool, very much masculine. Then we've got the Japanese Kitano Takeshi. And this guy has been in so many movies where he plays basically sort of a typecast role. He plays that guy who's fighting the Yakuza, or sometimes he's in the Yakuza and he's fighting against the Yakuza. He plays this guy who is always stoic. He's always strong. He's always got that poker face, which he's famous for, the Kitano poker face. And I'll show you a picture of him so you can get a feel for it. But he's also always guided by this sense of honor, the sort of Japanese Bushido code, which I think is really cool to think about in how I was raised and what I watched, what I took in as a young kid. I watched a lot of martial arts movies. And with that, you really get connected to the Bushido code, the sense of honor, discipline, and all those things. And that's why he's one of my favorite actors. And there were many other Japanese actors that I watched growing up, but many of them were not very popular, so I wanted to pick someone who was very popular, who's been in a lot of movies. Now this guy's kind of a comedian, so it's not really good to watch his newer movies. Instead, if you're going to watch it, watch something older. You get to see that real stoic masculinity that sort of OG Japanese man is famous for. Number 9, we've got Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. And I think every person on earth wishes they had a friend like Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. Everyone wishes they had that wise old black man who can just tell them tales, give them advice, share experiences, and sort of guide them through another filter. And when I watched this movie, I just remember how much wisdom he had and how much courage and how he's this sagely old man full of all this knowledge, and he's always got a positive attitude. And there were many people in my life who I could relate that character to. There was this guy who my mom worked in the building he was the janitor of. His name was Chris. And I just remember he had all this crazy wisdom, and he had that cool swag about him. And I remember he treated me like no one else treated me before. I was like 12 years old, and the way he communicated with me was like unlike any grown man had ever communicated with me. And I appreciated that so much, that dude. And he just reminds me so much of that Morgan Freeman style character. Just salt of the earth. A guy who's going to talk to you like you're a man. Even though you're a young man, even though you're 12 years old, he's going to talk to you like a man. And I loved that. And then the next one, number 10, a little bit funny, but it taught me something. we've got Jackie Chan. So I watched a lot of Jackie Chan when I was a kid. Almost all of his movies around Christmas time. I don't know why, but at Christmas time they would always play his movies on TV. And I remember thinking that it was different. He was different from other movie characters. Why? Because he was goofy. He would fall down. He would get in these situations where ultimately he would beat up the bad guy, but he would get so messed up in the process. He would fall down. He would fall off a ladder. He would slide through some trash or something. And I remember thinking that you're not going to be perfect. And for that character to just be not perfect during a time when basically all the action heroes had no flaws. They were just like gods. And then we've got Jackie Chan where mistakes happen, but he does the right thing. And he always played this guy who was just like the average guy, the everyman. But the everyman had this quiet capability. He had this ability to handle stuff if he needed to handle it. And inevitably, he always did the right thing. Guided again by that code, that invisible code, which I think that all masculinity centers around. Centers around an invisible code that we try to follow. And also sort of like the Sigma male code. And the last one, we've got Mel Gibson in Mad Max. And Mel Gibson plays a real silent badass in these movies. And I love these films because you've got this real isolated guy, real self-reliant, real independent, but he has this twisted past, this dark past, and he's always on the move. He's always wandering, trying to solve, while at the same time run away from his past. So these are the movies that I watched as a kid, these characters, these actors, which sort of developed this part of my masculinity and helped me see what masculinity looked like in others. Even though they're fictional, there's still a lot of parallels to real life, a lot of things you can still learn. And I like to think of these movies as we watch the world evolve. We watch different characters, different plots come out, different styles of movies, remakes of things with all female casts, which I don't necessarily have anything against. But I do think that there was a period in time in the 80s and the 90s and the late 70s where we had these characters who just personified the outrageous masculinity to its extreme. And I think one day we'll probably look back on this in the 80s and the 90s and think, wow, what an extreme form of masculinity. And we might even look back on it with a little bit of hope and sort of nostalgia for that time when a man could be larger than life and just live through his full masculine, as the time nowadays when it's becoming out of fashion to do so. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And let me know what you think. What were some movies you watched as a kid or recently that shaped your version of masculinity? Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you like stuff about Sigma males, introverts, masculinity, empaths, creatives, or you just like me. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.